Hello everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. Today we're going to be talking about the circular saw. The first thing with using any power tool, and especially a circular saw, is you want to make sure that you've got good eye protection and good hearing protection. And you know, that's not just to protect yourself. It's to help you do a better job, because when your eyes are protected and your ears are protected, it means you don't have to rush through because it's so noisy or that there's chips flying off. You can take your time and work through the cut, and that way you're going to do a safer cut and you're going to do a better quality cut as well. You know, it's possible that this is the most popular woodworking or carpentry tool on the planet, except maybe the electric drill. These saws, unfortunately, are responsible for an awful lot of injuries to woodworkers and to carpenters. And you know, when I first learned how to use a circular saw, we didn't have the same safety concerns, and I have had to relearn in the last 10 years. I've had to relearn how to use this, and so today I'm going to show you some of the features of circular saws and how to use these safely so that you don't end up like some people and have some serious injuries. Let's take a moment to have a look at blades for circular saws, and there's a few different sizes. The one that I'm using is 7 1/4 inch. There's also smaller sizes than this, but there's different tooth configurations. When I first started using circular saws, typically all you could get was a 16 to 20 tooth blade. Now there's 24 tooth, there's 40 tooth, there's 60 tooth. There's even a variety of metal cutting blades, and you can even use these fiber wheels on there, which is, you saw me using the fiber wheel on there. You just need to make sure that you get the right arbor size. Now, this is for a grinder. This is a different size for a grinder. You need a 3/8 size, and if you ask your hardware person, they'll be able to put you in the direction. But if you're cutting metal and you need an inexpensive blade, these are a great way of cutting bits of metal if you need. So for ripping wood, just like with your table saw, you need a few teeth, so 24 tooth. If you're cross-cutting, going across the grain of the wood, you want more teeth to get a finer cut, and you can put a different blade on for that, a 40 tooth or a 60 tooth. So lots of variety of blades to choose from. Let's take a moment to talk about the blade and the orientation of the blade in the saw. Now, the way these blades rotate in the saw is they go up like this, and when I say up, they go up at the front like this. Imagine if they went down, they would be, the saw would be tending to try and drive itself out of the wood, and that would be really hard to hang on to. So we have the blades going up like this, and that way it tends to want to grab the wood and holds the wood securely here, so it's easier to make the cut. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because we always want the orientation of the teeth to go up whenever we're cutting wood. I have seen a number of cases where the blade has been reversed and the orientation of the teeth is going down, and we don't want to do that for cutting wood. We want that orientation of the teeth to go up so that we get a nice, fine, safe cut. Let's take a quick minute to look at a couple of the settings of circular saws. First of all, most of them have an adjustable plate like this. You can adjust the angle of it. These get used very seldom unless you're making making trusses for roofs. Then you might use that a bit more. The other thing that you can adjust with a circular saw is the height of the blade. And when I first learned to use a circular saw, we put the blade in, we drop the blade to the deepest depth, and we cut everything the same. And over the years, we discovered that there were problems with that, problems with kickback, people were getting injured, and not only all of that, but the quality of the cut was not what it could be. Now what we've learned is that every time there's a change in the material depth, we want to reset the depth of the blade. And in this case, if I were cutting this plywood, I would reset the blade height just like that, and it's very easy to do. It's just a little lever back here to do that. Very quick, very simple, and that's all ready to go. And when we get the tooth at about a half tooth below the material, that's the proper setting. That's going to do a few things. By resetting the blade at the proper height, it will give a better quality cut. There will be much less chance of kickback, so the saw is not going to want to kick back nearly as much because there isn't so much friction of the whole blade against the material. And the other thing it's going to do, it's not only going to give you a better cut because the blade is slicing into the wood instead of driving it up, it's also going to give you much better control because you don't have all of the blade down into the material, so you'll actually be able to follow your line or however it is that you're cutting your material. Here's a nice little feature that you'll see on some saws. If you look at the back of the saw where there's the lever to adjust the blade height, and if you look right in this area right in here, you'll see that there's numbers for different heights. So for example, there's for 2-inch material, there's 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch. Using sawhorses with a circular saw is a very quick and convenient way of cutting wood. And when you're cutting wood, you want to make sure that the distance of the wood that you're cutting, it needs to be supported if it's long enough that you think there's going to be kickback. And you never want to cut wood between the two sawhorses because it's going to fall away like that, and there's a good chance that there's going to be some kickback, and you'll be surprised. I know this sounds obvious to a lot of people, but you'll be surprised how many times I've seen people cutting between sawhorses. So we go to the end, and if it's long, if this was a 10-foot board, we would want to support it. For example, if I were going to cut this board here, I would not want this to fall off the end. So I would cut that along here, and that means that that board is supported. Now these pieces of wood that I have on here, you can see there's paint and everything on them. These are just sacrificial pieces of wood. These are fairly new on here, so there's no cuts in these yet, but typically over the years these get cut with all sorts of little things because I'm cutting wood. You're cutting through and you're making little marks like this in the wood because you're supporting that wood. And it's important to do that because if they're just little pieces like this, it would have been fine. But longer pieces, 1.5 feet, 2 feet and longer, you need to support those so that they're not falling off and you're losing control. Now that same theory is true if you're cutting sheets of plywood. For example, if you've got, say, an 8-foot long sheet of plywood and you're going to cut off 2 feet of it, you want to have that 2 feet of plywood supported underneath. And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, it's a safety issue because there's a chance the saw is going to bind when part of that plywood starts to droop, and that's why you want to support it. The other reason you want to do it is for the quality of your cut, because when you start cutting that plywood, if you don't have it supported, part of it's going to sag down and eventually it's going to break off, and that means you're not going to get a good quality cut. Here's our cut with the 40-tooth blade. This is with using the fiber blade. Well, that's our look at circular saws and circular saw safety. And you know, these really are a handy little tool, especially if you're a woodworker. For example, if you're getting big sheets of plywood, far safer to use your circular saw to break those sheets down on your sawhorses than trying to cut them by yourself on a table saw, for example. So there really is a place for these if you're a woodworker. Never get complacent about using this little tool because it can bite you and injure you. So always keep that in mind, that it's just like any other power tool. It can be dangerous. Don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed, we ask you to do that. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. I'm Colin Cadet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.